Welcome to episode 228 of the Shared Security Show. And joining me this week is co-host Scott Wright from the city that fun forgot.
Yes.
Ottawa, up in the Great White North.
Yes, that is true.
That is one of the nicknames of Ottawa, apparently.
It is.
Really?
It is. The city that fun forgot.
Huh.
You have to hear a little bit of the local politics stories and stuff like that. It's the capital of Canada, and weird things happen here. So
yes,
just not fun.
It's just not fun.
Just there's no fun in Ottawa, apparently.
None.
That's why
unless you have truckers that want to honk horns.
That's why one of my kids moved to Vancouver.
Yes.
Well, I will point out that they only get 2/3 of the fun because Ottawa doesn't have any fun because there's no FUN. Vancouver at least has UNN.
Well, that's pretty quick.
Oh.
Wow. Kevin is sharp today.
He is.
I'm not that sharp.
But I do have to introduce Kevin because he is also joining us. And he is from... Here's another little tidbit for you. He is from the bold new city of the South, Jacksonville, Florida.
To be very clear, I'm not from here, but this is where I am coming from now.
Yes, you reside there. Yes.
Yeah.
Bold new city.
The bold new city. Bold city is one that we've heard quite a bit down here. I don't know. It used to be the smell was what was bold. I think it was a coffee plant or something. Like they had paper.
That sounds delicious, actually.
Coffee
plant. A coffee plant would probably smell like coffee beans, right?
I feel like, I don't know, because I wasn't here then, but I believe that there is too much of a good thing.
Well, with that, now that you know where we all reside, and
by the way, we don't have a cool nickname for your city.
We do have a cool nickname. I'm from Cleveland, which is the rock and roll capital of the world.
Oh.
We have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Museum in Cleveland.
Why did the word armpit come to mind? I don't know.
I don't know. I've heard the same that, Scott, the same word came to my mind.
Yes. Well, Cleveland has had problems in the past. We're also known in the 80s. We had the Cuyahoga River, which caught on fire because it was so polluted.
Yes,
so that's why I think
I
learned more about Cleveland in the late night comedy.
Unfortunately,
Letterman and all those guys. Yeah,
but it's a better place now. That was all in the 80s. That is behind us now, and Cleveland's actually a pretty cool city. So
because the river burned up, right?
The river has been made whole environmentally.
Good.
Yeah. So this week we have a couple fun stories for everyone. First being DuckDuckGo caught giving Microsoft permission for trackers.
They were caught
despite its
red-handed
strong privacy reputation, right? So DuckDuckGo being a very privacy-focused company, I've actually seen billboards around, promoting DuckDuckGo and
this wouldn't be
privacy,
clickbait, would it?
It kind of is in a way because almost every article I've seen about this, it just says DuckDuckGo is giving Microsoft permissions and all that. But I do want to clarify, maybe before we get into the story, that what they're talking about is the DuckDuckGo browser, specifically the mobile app.
Yeah.
And this was something new. I didn't even know this was coming out, that DuckDuckGo designed a web browser.
I use the DuckDuckGo browser on my phone. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this applies to you then, Scott.
Oh man.
I will say though that while I will agree that many of the articles have come across as clickbait, I don't think the topic is. And the reason I don't think the topic is well, yes, this is a according to this this article and the I don't want to call it research. They browsed to a web page and looked to see what went out. That's not really research in my mind. But they actually show where on one of the pages that LinkedIn and Microsoft trackers are there. The DuckDuckGo browser actually does an alert saying, hey, look how good we are. We blocked Facebook and Google here. And while we can be pedantic and point out that, yes, in fact, they did not claim they blocked everything on that page, I'm a very firm believer that we need to give people the benefit of the doubt. We need to think about what they're doing. We need to listen to them and talk to them. But I am also a very firm believer that when you build your entire business around an idea, right? We talked about this previously.
Oh yeah.
I read that book about Simon Sinek, the discovery of the
Mm-hmm.
why or
Yeah.
whatever. The why for DuckDuckGo is protecting privacy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they have a contract with Microsoft that allows Microsoft to track people. And yes, it's limited tracking.
Well,
Yes,
Do we know
it's
why? Like, why would they do that?
contractual. It's let's be very clear. DuckDuckGo has to make money somehow.
Right.
They are not a charity.
So it's our
They are
fault
not...
that we didn't donate enough in the early days.
No, not what I said. They somehow entered into a contract that said they could do this. Maybe, for all we know, and I don't know this is just an idea. Maybe when they were building the app and wanted to deploy it to a Microsoft mobile device to run it through the Microsoft store, you had to accept Microsoft trackers.
Yeah.
Maybe, right? So,
from what I've read, it has something to do with a search syndication agreement that they have. And they don't go into details of what that means, but for some reason, it only applies to the web browser, not like if you go to DuckDuckGo to search, or you set it as your default search engine in your web browser, that isn't affected by this. It's only the mobile app and only the browser.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
So there's something to do with that.
Yeah.
I think that, then we have to look at the other things they do and ask. What I would like to see DuckDuckGo do, that sounded dumb to say, is to everybody, crisscross applesauce in a circle and write, I'm going to search for, I don't know what the game is, but
you're thinking of DuckDuckGoose.
Oh, you're right.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. I believe that what they should do right now, and I think that this is the way they can get in front of this, is just be as transparent as possible. Say, look, here, not only did you find this one that we're doing this in, but here are the 4 other things that you may not like that we're doing. And I made up 4. Don't like, right. If they come out and say, look, here you go.
Yeah.
This is the stuff we've got. And here's the reasons we're doing it. And here's...
Totally agree. Yeah.
I respect that.
Totally agree. I think, they have to be clear that privacy isn't free. I mean, it may be a right, but it's not free.
Yeah. And they did, the founder and CEO did release a statement on Twitter, which we'll link in the show notes. And, he tries to explain the situation, and I totally understand too. I don't think this was malicious, right?
No,
I think they probably just overlook it just in their development process, didn't think about it.
But to create a headline that says caught doing this is a little clickbaity.
Yeah, it is. But I think that, this probably won't be the last type of thing that we see with, privacy companies or companies that have a privacy product. A researcher or a hacker or somebody's going to find something, right? Yeah. Unless, to your point, Kevin, that they are transparent about these things. And hopefully this maybe is a lesson learned for them, that they need to be more transparent going forward.
Yeah.
But I will keep using them. This does not deter me.
I am not deterred.
I will say the other browser that I recommend too is StartPage. They are not a sponsor of the show. We've had StartPage on the show before, but I always recommend DuckDuckGo and StartPage as two private browsers that I use and recommend to people. Every hack follows the same pattern. First, hackers exploit a human error, like a leaked key or a secret left in code. They gain a foothold and then pivot, moving from one compromised system to the next. Sound familiar? Teleport breaks this cycle. Open source Teleport gives every engineer, every piece of hardware, every application an identity, replacing secrets like passwords and keys with auto-expiring identity-based certificates. The Teleport platform reduces the opportunity for human error, increasing productivity and revolutionizing security and compliance. Learn why the most visionary businesses in the world choose Teleport at goteleport.com. So, Scott,
yes, sir.
Let's go into our Aware much?
Yes, Tom, we have an Aware Much segment, which I'm going to ask you to explain.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a
It has
while.
been a while.
But this Aware Much segment is sponsored by ClickArmor,
It is.
which is the world's first gamified security awareness platform.
Yes. Well done. I've taught
Yes.
Tom how to.
It's almost like I
Yes,
work
it's
there.
almost like you work there. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. You're welcome very much. So a hacker has stolen Verizon employee database, an employee database from Verizon after tricking workers, which I believe these were call center, right? When you call Verizon for assistance with your mobile device and your phone, they were essentially social engineered into giving away this information. They were able to install, the hacker was able to install, it looks like some type of remote access malware software that gave them access to an employee's machine. And then they found an internal tool. I love how they always find internal tools. It reminds me of like
Yeah.
the Twitter breach
No,
too,
I was
right?
going to
We
say,
found the
deja
super
vu.
secret, yes, admin internal tool that has access to everything. And then this person wrote a script, queried the database, and siphoned this information off. And the hacker was actually interviewed through Motherboard, and so we'll have an article to that. And it's kind of humorous, the dialogue that, of course, the hacker says that. These people are just so stupid for letting me in. It was too easy, essentially. And of course, Verizon denies
Yeah.
they admitted that it happened, but of course they downplay the seriousness of the data, which of course contradicts what the hacker actually says.
Yep.
And we see this all the time, right?
Yeah.
Companies trying to downplay it and say this isn't a big deal, but it is a big deal. And especially if people that work in call centers, help desk supports. I mean, these are targets for these types of social engineering attacks.
Yeah, they're very highly visible.
I have to ask, though, two things. One, anybody else find it funny that this happened and was announced right after the Verizon data breach report?
That is kind of ironic.
Yes.
So basically, this isn't the Verizon data breach report. This is just the Verizon data breach. And the other thing, everything I read about this, every article, every comment I've seen focuses around whether or not employee data is sensitive. If this is, I don't see a lot of people asking, "Hey, Verizon, this attacker was on your internal network. You acknowledge the attacker was on your internal network.
That's the bigger problem."
What else did they get? Yes, right now they're talking about this. Right now they've really, but they got this from sitting on somebody's desktop computer. That desktop computer has access to more things. What did this attacker do? Was the attacker just not going further because they got something they thought they could ransom and everything was good? Or, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know why everybody's focusing on the employee data.
Well, because that's the only thing we know, right? It almost goes back to when we were talking before about the breach disclosure around Okta and that stuff, right? And we got into the debate, Kevin and I, talking about how early should a breach be disclosed, right? And the question you actually rightly said, well, if you don't have enough information to actually, confirm anything useful, then don't say anything. And in this case, it's not only that, it's the only obligation they really have is under the privacy regulations, right?
Oh, yeah.
They don't have to disclose what else happened on the network, and I don't expect them to, really.
I totally agree with Verizon not saying. I want to know why all the reporters who are talking about this are skimming over the idea that the attacker had access to the internal Verizon network. Right? The reporters are talking about, well, he has access to, this attacker has access to names and email addresses and phone numbers, and that could be used in social engineering, which is true. Yeah. Everything there is true.
Right.
But the attacker got them from being on the internal network.
Yeah, there's definitely a clear implication. It's just like in ransomware attacks, before they started doing extortion around, the the data. One day, a ransomware writer said, "You know what? I've got enough access to encrypt all this data. Why don't I steal it first?" Right? So before that moment, everybody thought ransomware was just a threat to availability, but clearly there was always a threat to privacy. When you had access to that stuff, and it's the same sort of thing here. You're right. The reporters should be adding, and you know what? This implies they had a lot more access to internal network stuff and could have done, and probably did do a lot more than we're actually hearing. But at that point, a lot of people will point and say, "Well, that's speculation. We don't really know." So,
yeah.
We don't know what they have access to, but Verizon has confirmed they have access.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good discussion.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is, as we wrap up this aware much section, the whole idea of social engineering, it's, we've seen it twice now in a few months around the customer support role, right? That is, as you say, a big target. Well, it's a big target because it's easy to find, highly visible, but it's also becoming more protected. Every time this happens, we'll put more safeguards around the customer service people. And then the weakest point will be, gosh, maybe the developers or somebody else that you can find on LinkedIn or, and do some open source research on, send them an email and get them to do something or call them, right? So social engineering is never going to stop. It's just going to shift from customer service to other places. So that's why ClickArmor sponsors the Aware Much section of our podcast, because ClickArmor is the first gamified security awareness training and engagement platform that helps your team avoid phishing and social engineering attacks using fun challenges that actually reduce risks. So that's all for this episode of Aware Much.
Let's jump into our last story, which is that did you know that there's new research that says malware can be loaded onto your phone even if it's turned off? Says some security researchers.
And
right, Kevin?
and reiterated, but in this case, they're actual researchers. I will go with, but it was reiterated with a company that will sell you a Faraday cage wallet,
which also has sponsored the show. And they will sell you a very nice Faraday bag for your phone.
And I want to be very clear. I'm making fun of this as a sales pitch, but the idea of your phone being compromisable when it's in a state that you don't understand is so important to get.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But oh my God, I hate this article.
Well, you
should
the
article, the research.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Which is on Vice.
Your phone and replace the Bluetooth driver, we can attack you.
Yeah. Well, let's explain kind of what the whole deal is. So with the latest version of iOS, there's a new feature essentially that when you shut your phone off, and I found this because I just got a new iPhone 13, and I saw in tiny little text that says, just so you know, when you turn your phone off, certain things are still active, right? And it goes into a low power mode, basically. So Find My Phone and other location things can still be, if you lose your phone and it's powered off.
But not just Find Your Phone. This is also there so that the stalking alerts from the tags and stuff like that we talked about.
Well, that will still work. Yeah.
That still works, right? Like that, it's actually a good thing.
Will it still do the emergency SMS stuff too? Tornado alerts and stuff?
That I don't know, because I know I'm not sure if low power mode puts that into, it still has cellular.
I was going to say, well, you need a clock, but you actually don't, right? As soon as it powers up, it could get GPS time, but.
Right. But yeah, so these researchers have essentially found a way to attack the device when it's in this mode, but it's not easy, right? The device has to be jailbroken. That alone, the majority of people, unless you're super, mobile phone nerd, that jailbreaks their phone, you're probably very low risk to an attack like this, and it is very complicated. I mean, if you look at the
Yeah.
research. This is not an easy attack to pull off. So
But as much as I'll make fun of that, as much as I'll point out like, ha ha ha, right, you got to do all these other kind of things, this research actually calls out something that I think is really important to understand. The phone isn't actually off, and as such, wireless attacks are still possible.
that's right.
This research has all these extra steps, but I honestly believe that this is similar to when we say a buffer overflow causes denial of service, but that's one step away from code execution. That may be a huge step, but it is one step. In this case, they have proven that the wireless systems are still exploitable when the phone is off. And I hope you heard the quotes, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a critical thing to understand, because I'll be blunt. I will guarantee you that the vast majority of people don't read that little message you noticed.
No, they don't.
And even if they do, they don't understand the risk.
So there's a little implication I want to make sure I understand here, and maybe it'll help other people too. So when you say is exploitable when the phone is turned off, is it more exploitable, or is it just as exploitable as if the phone is on?
I would bet, and I don't know because I don't have one of these phones. I've not looked at this, but I will bet you that the phone itself is less exploitable. And the reason the phone is less exploitable is when it goes into this mode, it offers fewer features, right? So that alone, we've reduced our attack surface, right, by lowering the number of features. But the services that are still on are more likely the same level of exposure or slightly less, right? Based on features. But no, this does not make the phone
so if that's
more exploitable, except in one viewpoint.
So if that is the case, go ahead.
Finish. If I may just explain the one viewpoint real quick. If you previously the phone went off completely and this wasn't possible. So that is an additional level of risk that did not exist.
Okay. So one more clarification then. So what is the actual use case when I would be concerned about the phone being off and still exploitable versus if it was just left on?
I'm not sure I follow the question. I apologize.
I just wonder why it's important that we're pointing out that it's exploitable when it's turned off versus when it was on.
Oh, I think it's because I think it's because of the phrase when it's turned off. Yeah. What we're really pointing out is it's not turned off.
So it's more the expectation that perhaps somebody turns it off because they don't want to be tracked or they don't want to.
Let me ask you a question, Scott. Do you have a laptop, right?
You're looking at one, or I'm looking at you through one.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So no, I'm looking at you, man. I can't see. So your laptop, when you close the lid, right, and you carry it somewhere, you have an expectation that the laptop is not on.
No, I don't, but some do. Yes, probably. Yeah.
Some people do. But the reality is that laptop, in many cases, is still on at some level. This is the same thing with the phone. Okay. Previously, when you shut your iPhone off, it actually turned off.
Okay.
Now it's important to note because I just looked up this on my iPhone here. You get this message. If you click it, it says iPhone findable after power off. But when you click it, it gives you a warning basically, and you can temporarily turn that feature off. However, when you turn your phone back on, it defaults back to this setting. So you can't permanently disable the setting. You actually have to go in and hit that button if you want your phone to be completely off, which is a big change.
So you can't just ask Siri, "Are you still awake?"
No, probably won't work. But yeah, to your point, Kevin, I think this is a bigger deal just because of the messaging, right?
Yeah.
That people think that they're shutting their phone off when in fact they aren't, even though, and I have to agree that message is pretty poorly placed because a lot of people are going to ignore that.
Yeah. I think that this is a key thing that we've talked about. I know you and I have definitely talked about this multiple times. Is that we have to be very careful. We being everybody, the industry, right? in explaining what we mean, not what we think we told them, right?
Yeah.
Very, very often we say things, we document things, we present things in our systems or whatever, and we know what they mean. This is one of the reasons why here at Secure Ideas, and I know, I without even asking you, I know Bishop Fox does the same thing, that we have our reports go through a review process that involves at least one person who isn't a billable consultant, because they have a different perspective on how things work. And we want to make sure that we're not using an acronym that everybody knows what TCP means. No, they don't. Right? So
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. All right. Well, exciting stuff, right? That I'm sure there will be more coming out about that. And plug out to our friends at Silent, who make Faraday bags. They've been a longtime sponsor of the show. They give us a discount. Give all of you a discount, 10% off any product using the discount code Shared Security. So you can check that out. Great people over there. So, but with that, we will let everyone go for this week. And I want to thank both of you, as always.
Thank you, Tom,
for letting me talk about your lovely cities and nicknames. We'll see what I can come up with next week.
Yes.
Well, I'll give you a challenge.
Yes.
I'm not actually in Jacksonville. I'm in Orange Park.
Oh. All right. Fine. I'll do that. And I do want to plug next week's episode, actually. We have a very special episode. We're going to be talking about hacking ham. So,
you
if you thought ham was delicious,
yes.
We're talking about ham radio, actually.
So next week will not be kosher.
It will not be kosher at all. Apologies in advance for that. But we have several special guests who I will not talk about yet. You'll be in for a little surprise. That's all I'll say. And Kevin knows who I'm talking about. So
yes, I do. Butterfly.
Yes, it shall be a very entertaining episode. So be sure to check out next week's episode. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and we will talk to you all next week. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, hit that like and subscribe button. To catch all the latest from the show, visit our website, sharedsecurity.net. Follow us on Twitter at SharedSec, and join our Reddit community on the Shared Security Show subreddit.